It's Friday, August 9th, 2024, and Fridays are Ask or Tell Me Anything next on the AM Update. So Kamala is indeed agreeing to debate Donald Trump. Earlier in the day yesterday, it was reported Donald Trump had agreed to 3 different debates, one on Fox, one on ABC, one on NBC. Later in the day, however, Kamala Harris's campaign confirmed that she's agreeing to do the debate on September 10th. I'm not sure what television network that's actually going to be on, but it will be a debate, a presidential debate on September 10th between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. At first, I was pretty ambivalent, if you listened at the time, as to whether or not Donald Trump should debate Kamala Harris. But I think at this point, given the just incredible AstroTurf campaign that has been waged, or really not waged, on the part of the Harris campaign over the last, almost 3 weeks now, it is important to finally get her out there in an uncontrolled environment. Now, I'm guessing this debate isn't going to be on Fox, so it's probably going to be NBC or ABC. That's going to be a massive advantage, and that's what we said about the CNN debate, and we were all pleasantly surprised, not only because of Joe Biden's obvious dementia, but because of the way CNN handled it. CNN was great. That was better than any of the GOP primary debates. Do we even have a GOP primary? So she's still going to have a massive advantage, I would think, though, regardless of whether it's on NBC or ABC. However, it's still going to be completely uncontrolled. She could still go out there and stick her foot in her mouth. You heard that clip that I played yesterday morning on AM Update where when she's not in a controlled environment, when things aren't going exactly how she was prepping or planning them to go, she can lose her composure really, really fast. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Ask or Tell Me Anything. Thank you for the many submissions that you gave me. Ask or Tell Me Anything. Ask any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs to be covered. Let's do a couple of these in the same vein. Both of these are in the same vein. Let's Find Out says, I live in Minnesota, and I just want everyone to know, the way the Democrats did this in Minnesota was simple. Basically Californianizing Minnesota. They developed a plan way ahead of time and told the public about it after the fact. They tried things out taking turns with Pritzker, Whitmer, Newsom, Hochul, and learned and revised. They kissed up to the press so the stories stayed buried. They accused dissidents of being small-minded hicks if they even acknowledged them at all. Think of how effective Ron DeSantis has been. He had a plan and he carried out. Then he informs the public. The way forward is not only defense, it's full court press that needs to be planned out now. This is where Project 2025 was headed. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to argue with that. Democrats, it's like I don't know, Ultron, always learning, always evolving, looking at different examples. You pointed out a few of them. Easier to do something like that in California, which had already been Californianized before Gavin Newsom came on the scene. But it's a different story. It is a different story in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and even Pennsylvania. Looking at what's working, what didn't work legislatively in those types of states, and then fitting it, tailor-making it to your state, in this case, Minnesota, because that state, I mean, you go outside, an hour outside of the Twin Cities. And I lived there for 5 years in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert at all things Minnesota. But from what I have seen in my experience there and the times that I've come back and visited, you go out an hour outside of Hennepin and Ramsey County, and you are in, like, Alabama. It's like you're in Alabama. They're as right-wing rabidly as anywhere else in the country. But that's the model the Democrats always follow. I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier this week who still lives in Minnesota. It's basically Chicago light. And the same could be said about another, several other states, but it fits because it's in the Midwest. Chicago, a huge Democrat machine that basically runs the entire state. You go an hour outside of Chicago, and it's like you're in Mississippi, the backwoods of Mississippi in terms of politics. Follow Truth also has this. I grew up in Minnesota and live in Wisconsin in a border town to the Twin Cities for 22 years. We need to tell everyone how bad Walz is. Everything he's done to destroy Minnesota the last 2 years keeps me up at night. Breaks my heart to see people get behind him and all the destruction that he's done. Yeah, and there's a reason why people are talking about Walz so much this week, beyond any other pick-your-name vice presidential candidate is because he is psychotic. He is psychotic. The dude is just not trying to do the same thing he's trying to do with J.D. Vance, but he's the definition of projection. And yeah, projection is a cherished and long-standing leftist trait where you project everything that you are onto your opponents. And he's doing that with J.D. Vance. But there's something weird there. There is something weird going on with Tim Walz. Beyond what we're hearing, yeah, he's a rabid communist. Just mask is off communist. Yeah, he was driving 98 in a 55-mile-an-hour zone in, I believe, Nebraska, driving drunk, pretended he couldn't hear the officer, pretended to be deaf. Somehow he's turned that into a sympathetic story or something. I don't know. Stolen valor, multiple instances. There's like 2 new videos every day. That's a big deal. I think that's actually a bigger deal than even what we know. Because, I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's in the Army National Guard, and I showed him a New York Post story about this stolen valor on the part of Tim Walz. He was like, "Oh, a bunch of my groups I was in were talking about that. I was trying to figure out why they were all talking about stolen valor all of a sudden." I think that story has actually penetrated the zeitgeist further than we know. So, yeah, I'm glad, at least on the right, and it seems like the stolen valor story has leached out of just right-wing media circles and gone into the mainstream. But yeah, I hope people are successful in telling people about how. I mean, I knew he was bad. I knew he was bad before he was under consideration, but since then, man, he's not just a rabid communist. He just seems like a terrible, terrible human being, which it's not that big of a surprise. J.R. Burdick says, imagine if RFK Jr. had run as a Democrat and even received 1 primary vote. He would have had more votes than Kamala, and they would have had to have a contested race. How bizarre. Yeah, looking back, I wonder if RFK Jr. has any regrets. But there were a number of other Democrat candidates. One was from Minnesota, a congressman, and I can't remember his name, but he was never under consideration. But there were a number of other Democrat, Marianne Williamson, more votes than Kamala Harris. They just made this up as they went along, and everybody in the "we must protect our sacred democracy," that party couldn't be bothered to bat an eye. It's just upside down bizarro world. Cheryl Tuskin said, "Did you see all the rhinos endorsing Senator Tester in Montana? This is the crux of the problem in red states that Daniel Horowitz has been lamenting about forever." Yep. There are no real red states, except for like 2 or 3 places, maybe. And even in those places, as I detailed, I can't remember if it was last week in Ask or Tell Me Anything or the week before, even in a place like Florida, which I would consider an actual red state, it's just filled with trash Republicans. It just so happens that the guy at the top is basically a benevolent dictator for our side. And so that changes the whole complexion of that state. But there's no such thing really as red states, only not blue states. But yeah, I'm looking at this list that you sent, Cheryl, and just this massive list of people who are voting for a total rhino in John Tester in that Montana Senate race. JD Texan says the wrong bashing of Basham. Yeah, you're talking about Megan Basham. And the book that she has published just came out last week called Shepherds for Sale. Haven't talked about it on the AM update, and now would be a good time to talk about it. When you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that yelped is the one you hit. What does it say when you threw a rock into a pack of dogs and they all start yapping, even the ones you didn't hit? I don't know. Maybe that was a hand grenade that you threw in there, not a rock. Because that's what's happened with Megan Basham. Now, one of the ones that I keep seeing brought up is this Gavin Ortland guy. And I'd really never heard of him prior to his misrepresentation of her representation of him in her book, if that makes sense. He took out of context a number of passages, I think in the first chapter of Meghan's book, in which he was invoked by name, but he misappropriated other quotes and said that she was talking about him, just completely bastardized what he had said in a previous video where he adopted basically all of the left's talking points and terminology regarding global warming, and was trying to play the victim here. And that's what I've seen kind of in Meghan's critics. That's kind of what I've seen out of them. It's either ignore or completely misrepresent what she is saying and misquote her, and misattribute and misquote themselves. But she brought all the receipts. So she's doing a great work, in my opinion. And I like Meghan. I think there is a difference. I'm sure there is a difference. Back, it's got to be close to a decade ago. You may know of this name, an independent journalist named Julie Roys, started in what became a series of exposés exposing various figures, various ministries, various churches within Western evangelicalism for various scandals. I think the very first story she did was something regarding, if my memory serves correctly, something regarding Moody Bible Institute. And I think she used to be with Moody Radio, again, if memory serves. And it was something about misappropriation of funds or mishandling of funds, something like that. And it wasn't handled correctly. And then it was James MacDonald, Ravi Zacharias. She's even put John MacArthur in her crosshairs before. And I have mixed feelings about her at best. It seems to me she went from, hey, I have a real concern with something close to home, with Moody Bible Institute, something close to home, James MacDonald. Now I'm just looking for the next scandal within the church to elevate for whatever her motivation is. At best, I have mixed feelings about Julie Roys, but it seemed like as time went on, she was hitting, especially when it comes to sexual misconduct, she was hitting from the left. Now, that doesn't mean that these things shouldn't be reported on. It just seems like it was framed in a very Me Too way, an egalitarian way, as time went on. And Lord knows, Ravi Zacharias, biggest disappointment of my life. James MacDonald. I wasn't super surprised about that, having worked in Christian radio before, Christian talk radio before. But it just seemed like she started to hit more and more conservative figures. And maybe, a lot of these things, they need to be handled within churches. And if they aren't, and they are, good attempts, righteous attempts to handle them within the church, then sure, outside the church, there maybe needs to be, the local church, I should say, maybe there needs to be accountability. But anyway, I have mixed feelings at best about Julie Roys. What I like about Meghan is that she's hitting all of these figures she's talking about, whether it's Russell Moore, David French, this Gavin Ortland guy. Oh, by the way, full disclosure, Gavin Ortland, as I understand, is the brother of Dane Ortland, who wrote the book that Bella and I are studying on No Suck Saturday. So, bad time to be a pastor with the last name of Ortland. But anyway, she's hitting these figures from the right, which is something that I don't think that Julie Roys really has ever done. Maybe as righteous and justified as her work has been in some cases, she's never really done that. So, I really appreciate Meghan and pray for her as well. She's taking all sorts of fire, really, really bad faith at best, lies and deception at worst. So she's taking a lot of fire for this, and she's holding strong. A couple of items. Jim Stocker says Michigan has created a snitch line to report your neighbors for election misinformation. Yes, I saw this story. They set up, I believe the Bureau of Elections, or whatever it's called in Michigan, has set up a tip line for citizens to call to report misinformation. I don't know who gets to define what misinformation is. Oh, yes, you do. You know who gets to define that. They just took a page out of Tim Walz's playbook, setting up a COVID snitch line so you can call on your neighbors in case they've got friends over in the backyard. The UK is arresting people right now for retweets, for reposts, for things the government over there deems hateful. I told you yesterday this is coming to the United States. It's already here in blue states. The power's already there anyway. Sometimes it's overt, like this story out of Michigan. Let's go to this. Bama conservative, do you think Trump getting shot at in Biden's 4 years will get voters who didn't vote Republican in 20 and 22 to finally vote Republican? I'm not buying it. If what happened to us in 2021 won't get them to vote against Democrats, how will Trump getting shot out get them to vote for him? Yeah, I don't think this is happening now. There was a window there where Trump could have gone, I don't know, he could have gone shaking his hips, Elvis, at the Republican National Convention. He could have done that act instead of fat Elvis in Las Vegas, which is what we got. There's an opportunity there for him to show people, I'm a changed man. But he didn't do that. I always thought, the picture of Trump raising his fist with the American flag in his background, I thought that, coupled with the demoralization was really all the key to this election, because Trump and Biden are such defined figures that nobody's going to cross over and say, you know what? We're 8 years into this. Actually, I've changed my mind about Donald Trump. No, it was always going to be, and it still is, all about demoralizing their side. The soft Democrat voters. The ones who, the election is today? I better go vote. Getting them to check out early. There's still time for that demoralization, but they have to press the issue. The Republicans have to press the issue. And they're not really on message. J.D. Vance is basically the only one in that campaign that I've seen who's on message consistently and out there consistently. Let's do one more. The Berean Times asks, let's say Trump wins the election, calls you up, and tells you that you have any position in the executive branch besides president and vice president. What position do you choose, and what do you do in your first month in the new gig? I'm going to take the Department of Education. Almost said Attorney General, but I'm taking the U.S. Department of Education. You could wreak a lot of havoc really, really fast as Secretary of Education. You could do one of two things. You could purge, well, actually, you really have to do two things. Just completely purge that entire bureaucracy. Purge it. Cut positions, purge it. Cut positions, punt to the states. Hey, this is your job now. We'll give you funding, but we're not setting down any standards. I guess you could set standards if you wanted to as well, but I'm always in favor of just kicking standards and kicking control to the local level. Just completely purge that bureaucracy. And if you wanted to go even a step further, you could make rules in your own image. Okay? The Department of Education trying to deny poor kids lunch if schools don't let dudes use your daughter's restroom, okay? You could say, hey, if you're a school that's letting dudes use your daughter's restroom, you're getting no funding. You're getting no funding. So I would take Secretary of Education. All right, man, my brain is dead. 5, I was party. I'm not going to tell you what, but I was party to about 6 hours worth of produced content today. And, this is not a physically taxing job, but it is cognitively taxing. And my brain is dead. For all of you Apple paid $5 a month subscribers, tomorrow is another edition of No Suck Saturday. Bella and I are going to play a game, and I'm excited to play it. That'll come up tomorrow for all of our paid subscribers at the $5 a month level over on No Suck Saturday tomorrow morning. For the rest of you, we'll be back at it here again on AM Updates on Monday.